Hey, good afternoon, everyone, from just outside of Washington, D.C., and the headquarters of the Consumer Electronics Association in Arlington, Virginia. I'm Tyler Souters with the CEA. Thanks for joining us. And today we're discussing one of the most elemental facets of the developing world and how tech is playing a major role in improving the world's health and also some of the economic benefits in our developing world. So joining us from just across the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. are two members of the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves. On one hand, Dr. Ranyee Chiang is Director of Standards, Technology, and Fuels for the Alliance. And also Kip Patrick is with us, who is Director of Communications. Kip and Ranyee, thank you both for being with us today.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, it's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk first about the issue at hand. We're talking about clean cookstoves, and when I say the most elemental needs that we can have as humans, it's the need to prepare our food, to feed our families. But this gets more and more complicated when you get into the ways that the developing world is often preparing that food. That is collecting, transporting, and then burning wood and breathing the remnants of that. Some statistics to start off with from the World Health Organization. Every day, 3 billion people in this world are using cook fires with solid fuel. We're talking about wood, coal, waste, manure, things like that. And parallel to that, roughly 4 million people die every year, so 4 million a year, from inhaling smoke produced by inefficient cooking stoves. These numbers, it's hard to get a grip on exactly what they mean when we're talking about such a simple, basic problem that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, it really is. The scale of the problem is immense, and it's one that not a lot of people do think about. Like you were talking about, people think about running water, sanitation, or malaria, these other issues. But if you really want to talk about volume, this is impacting 3 billion people every day and killing more than a lot of other diseases combined. And it's an elemental thing that we should be able to solve. I mean, you're talking about cooking a meal, and while we don't think about it, we have a microwave, we have a stove, we have a toaster. We prepare our meals in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It takes a lot of people in the developing world hours to go collect the fuels, which can take up to 4 hours a day, collecting wood or other fuels, and then actually cooking the fuel. Cooking the meals. And we're talking about 3 meals a day cooked over an open fire, a rudimentary stove. But it's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's taking a lot out of both the people power, the environment, and a number of other impacts that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a moment.
Right, and just considering the number of us who, if you're on the East Coast and joining us, just finished lunch, or maybe you're doing this over lunch right now, and you just popped your meal into a microwave, like you said, Kip. It couldn't be easier, and yet this is a process. The collection alone involves what can be dangerous travel. Primarily, these are women, either mothers or daughters, who are going out and collecting this wood, this fuel. And in the natural deforestation process, well, I wouldn't say it natural, but the way this evolves is you're, of course, going to clear the wood that's closest to your home first and foremost. So with each passing day, you're traveling farther and farther from home in order to get the fuel you need to sustain your family.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's one of the other big problems is both the time that women, children, people, kids could be spending in school, yet they have to spend hours going out and collecting wood or fuel to burn, and women doing the same things. And there's also a safety issue, as you talked about, women being exposed and spending so much time away from home, far away from developed areas where who knows what could happen. But then also the deforestation and the impact on the environment is immense. And the stats are incredible. And from the environmental perspective, deforestation is huge, but also on the climate, when you're burning these solid fuels, the emissions released are at incredible amounts. Something the equivalent of, I think if you cleaned up, I forget the exact stat, but it's the equivalent of all the cars on the road today you could get rid of if you could actually figure out how to fix this problem. And it's one of the things that technology is helping us to address, is getting to the next point and finding the evolutionary points to moving from an open fire to a cleaner stove to finally clean stoves that you're going to see the most impacts health-wise and environmentally.
Well, let's go down that road a little bit, Kip, because we have very tech-savvy friends who are joining us for this hangout. And Ranyee, I'd like to turn to you now, and your specialty is working with the testing experts around the world who deal with the evaluation, the communication of stove performance and stove quality. In my mind, as I translate that internally, that is very much about new tech, new innovation, and the way it can be put into practice both efficiently, effectively, and then with cost in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot about new technologies in one part, and we want to make sure we have good evaluation of the technologies, that consumers, governments, donors, investors, that we have good transparency on not just is this a brand new shiny object, but what does it really mean? What potential performance can it deliver? And then once you have that foundation of being able to evaluate technologies, really transforming and supporting innovation. And that's a big area of focus for the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves. We're a public-private partnership of over 1,000 organizations at this point, working together to address different aspects of the issue, all the way from research to advocacy, supporting enterprises, bringing investment into the sector. And technology really is at the core of this, that we want to have the best possible technologies we can then bring to scale. And in some cases, it may not be necessarily new technology. There are ways to very simply and easily process fuels that can lead to a lot of newer options that are cleaner and more efficient. It's also about innovations in business models and raising awareness among consumers. So the technology is a central piece, but it's also very, very connected to all of these other things that need to happen to have a thriving market that's going to reach the 3 billion people.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's dive right into some of that technology. Ranyee and Kip, I know you all have some examples of the latest technology and some of the most effective devices that are on the ground right now, making a difference in terms of alleviating the need to travel and to find and to transport this very heavy fuel, wood, also that alleviates the carbon emissions, the smoke inhalation for a lot of these families. So please kick us off with some of the latest tech innovations that you're excited about.
Yeah, we have a few different options here, and I'm also going to pull in our colleague Neerja Penamecha, Senior Associate for Testing and Technology, to also walk us through some of the technologies. We've tried to bring a few examples that represent different technology types, different features, and then also different models of bringing the technology to consumers. So should we start with the BioLite?
Absolutely. So this is the BioLite base camp. So this is actually a model that's available here for recreational use in the U.S. and other developed countries. And what's interesting about the BioLite company is that they've seen a dual market here. There's one for recreational use in the U.S., for example, and then on the other hand, home cooked stoves for developing countries. This particular model works off of wood and other biomass.
Some of the cool characteristics about it. We'll look a little more closely, and I'll bring it closer so you can see it. And this is what's the things that are going to be interesting to viewers is you feed the wood or the fuel through the front. And then you want to have USB.
Sure. And then here on the side, you actually have a USB charger, so you can charge your cell phone or whatever.
Or you can even plug in a light for children to read at night and do their homework, or people don't have access to electricity. This is taking people who are off the grid and connecting them to at least a localized power source. And what these can do is often people can also charge phone, and some people have ended up with a stove like this turning it into a business, and they charge other people in their communities or villages. They charge cell phones for a certain fee. They can end up making money to pay for other things that they need, such as food or fuels. And then here's the light, a small light you can see while you're cooking, but you can also use it to read if you need to. And it's going a long way both for livelihoods and educational improvements.
And a little back, I just want to mention a little background about the company BioLite we're talking about, the manufacturer of that product. This is a Brooklyn-based company here in the U.S., about 40 employees around the world, and they exhibited at the 2015 CES and received, deservedly so, some pretty strong media attention. And one of the things their founder said, Jonathan Cedar, I found especially interesting, and Ranyee, maybe you can speak to this. He was talking about the economic incentives here, and Kip, you were showing us some of the different ways that that owners of this can benefit. And he was saying the charging benefits change the way purchasing decisions around stoves are made. And to paraphrase grandly here, his point was that often the wife collects the fuel, cooks the food, so she sees a benefit here potentially. But it's the electricity that gets the men on board. So you're talking about a sell for the or a pitch for the whole family in terms of making the decision to invest in a product like this, and then the economic benefits on the other end are manifold.
Yeah, that's a common story that we've heard from BioLite and from a lot of our partners, that by having a stove technology with multiple features, you can access different goals that people in the household may have. And I think that in this case, there's something universal about, we're not all that different here in the U.S. Where we're talking from, and in other countries, wanting to have an aspirational product that is new and that is different and unique and represents something you can show off to your neighbors. And so that winds up being, in addition to the fuel savings, the health benefits, reducing the smoke that people are breathing in, having a product that is desirable and in some ways flashy is appealing.
Mm-hmm. A quick note for everyone who's joining us right now on this Hangout. First of all, thanks for being here. Secondly, we'd like to hear from you. Drop us your questions for Ranyee, for Kip, for the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves. We'd love to know what you're thinking and get your questions answered if possible. And then also, you notice on the side of your screen, stream of information if you want to learn more about the Alliance and its efforts, or maybe how you can get involved, especially if you have products or maybe a facilitator in this process of putting these products together or developing the innovations or getting them on the ground. Check out some of those links. It could be a benefit to you. Ranyee, back to you for a moment. On the tech side here, developing Cookstoves combines high-performance tech on one hand, and we just saw some of that with the BioLite, with the ease of use and affordability. And let's face it, we're talking about the developing world, so cost effectiveness and cost to enter even the market are major deciding factors here.
It is a big challenge that we're dealing with in terms of a technology and engineering challenge. On the one hand, people have been cooking with materials that they have gathered for free for millennia, the oldest engineering thing that humans have been doing. And on the other hand, burning things like wood, charcoal, solid fuels, that is a complicated process that's really difficult to control. So comparing it to an engine in a car or a jet engine, you're using a very dense, liquefied, easy-to-burn fuel in those cases. In many cases in these developing countries, it's a complex biological material that varies season to season. It depends on where it's harvested from, how wet it is, and how the size of it, the shape. So in terms of the engineering challenge, it's an interesting one. It's a hard one. I would throw it out to people who have joined this this hangout. If you're interested in applying your engineering skills to addressing some of the world's most pressing problems, this is a really great opportunity. But what it also means is we wind up having to balance affordability, performance, ease of use, durability. We want to make sure that stoves, people are spending a big portion of their income on energy, and we want to make sure that the technology lasts as long as possible. So in terms of an engineering challenge, it's a hard one, but at the same time, I think the experience is a lot of people in the international development community, in the engineering community, in the technology community coming together has really started to make a big difference in moving the technology forward.
You mentioned that wood as a fuel source is free. It has been for millennia. That's a major appeal here. That's also a benefit when we're talking about renewable energy sources that some of these products tap. Ones that comes to mind that we've talked about on our CEA blog at ce.org is GoSun. It's a solar stove that works even on cloudy days. I think this is especially cool because it's a Kickstarter success story. This is a company that had a goal of $40,000. They hit that goal via Kickstarter in just 4 days. After 6 weeks of the campaign, they reached more than $200,000. So clearly a lot of appeal here. But Ranyee and Kip, the idea of a renewable energy source is especially appealing and important in this scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, when I said wood is free, it's free financially, but there are other costs associated with
Sure. Sure. And with solar, let's be fair, it's not free. There's an initial cost to have the technology to harvest those solar rays.
Yeah. In the case of the solar cookers, there are some designs that directly convert the energy. I'm sorry that we don't have a model to show here, but directly convert the energy into heat from the sun. So the GoSun that Tyler was talking about, it's a vacuum tube where the sunlight can pass through the tube, heat up the food, and because it's a vacuum tube, it insulates and retains the heat inside. It cooks the food really quickly and then keeps it warm for a long time. So in that case, it is a free, very abundant source of energy. We also have a couple of other options here of fuel. So ethanol as well, especially produced from agricultural residues, waste products that aren't needed for fuel or for agriculture. Converting that into ethanol that burns very cleanly. It's also relatively easy to use, and with simple denaturants, you can make sure that people aren't ingesting it. And then also converting agricultural residues into more processed fuels instead of having powdery things that are not very energy dense. Compacting into these are some pellets that are from East Africa, made from sawdust and agricultural wood residues.
They burn much more cleanly than traditional fuels.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, now, would you put all of that into the larger category of biomass? That seems to be the right term, and you're especially well adapted to talking about this, Ranyee, given your background at DOE when you were dealing with the environmental impacts of biofuel and also the sustainability of bioenergy. This is definitely a turn for the better, correct? We turn to those types of fuel stocks.
It definitely is a strong word. I'm coming from a scientific background where there's always some amount of uncertainty. But
there's a true scientist for you, right?
That is a question we are looking at in terms of not only do we want to develop the fuel supply chains, we want to make sure that we develop them carefully so that we minimize the environmental impacts, maximize the environmental benefits. It's a complicated system because we're dealing with agriculture, we're dealing with markets, people's livelihoods, and so we do want to keep an eye on all of that together so that we can maximize the benefits, environment and for health as well.
Okay, we have our first question from all of you who are joining us here at the Hangout. And Ranyee, while we're on the topic of biomass, this is especially pertinent. If biomass cook stoves included a free packet of tree seeds, how would that then affect a family in terms of a future food source, perhaps? Do you have some numbers or some insight into how those economics or the mathematics, maybe is a better term, would work out for something like that? Is that a equitable equation?
The numbers and the cost benefit of that, I don't have that ready, and certainly we can follow up with the person who asked the question with a deeper conversation. But in general, doing the reforestation is a really important goal. We've partnered with a lot of folks working on forestry so that not only are we ensuring that the use of the fuels is as efficient as possible, but that the growth of the fuel is as renewable as possible and sustainable.
Let's get back to the tech community for a moment now. And this is a quote I actually found from you, Ranyee, talking about the topic here. And again, this goes into your work working with global testing experts, again, on efficiency, on quality, on performance here. You had said we're aiming, this is on collaboration, for a clear culture, culture of clear evaluation and sharing that data, a culture of greater access and sharing data so it becomes a driver for innovation. Could you delve into that a little bit in terms of the equation there and how that all plays out in turn?
Yeah, well, I can talk a little bit about the history of where the sector has been. I think it's clearly a compelling issue. There have been a lot of people working on stove design to address the issue that we're facing, but it is often easy to take the goodwill and assume benefits. And there are some situations where stoves have been designed in the past, and people are very open about those lessons as well. I'm not revealing any deep, dark secrets. That the stoves that were designed were not always better than the traditional stoves. And so that's where, as a sector, we have all really focused hard on making sure we have consistent evaluations of technology performance that are clear easy for anyone to understand. And then once we have that in place, that means we can really be comparable to other industries. And I will continue talking as you raise your.
Oh, I got to get a selfie of you guys. Well, not even a selfie. I wanted a picture of you both for Twitter purposes afterward. And I want to get you in action. That's supposed to be candid. Ranyee, you almost ruined the moment. Gosh.
I'm sorry. I should have continued going and made it a candid active chat.
Well, here.
Please.
But on similar to other sectors where you have appliance energy efficiency or fuel efficiency for cars, how many miles per gallon. Once you make that clear, that's incentive for the industry to bring a little competition into things and try to raise their products to the next level.
Another interesting point is that new cooking technology also benefits local industry, local trade in these developing countries. It's seems to have an exponential effect both on a micro and macro level on, at the most micro, a family who's now doing better and living healthier lives and is in a safer environment. But there's also a macro element to, if not an entire country, at least a region or towns or villages that can benefit from this on some level.
There is. It's an interesting challenge. We're dealing with a global market with a lot of local actors and players as well. And so we do have international manufacturers as well as local producers who are making stoves to be used in the regions where they live.
And I think that's one of the roles of the Alliance is to help serve as a catalyst for growth in a lot of these businesses. The smaller businesses, for example, there's a company called Greenway out of India. It's founded by a woman and a man who were there working in 2 or 3 smaller areas of India. We were able to give them a seed grant through one of our funding mechanisms. Now they've gone from that small regionalized company to the largest stove manufacturer in India, who are now exporting stoves to Mexico. So it's one of those success stories that groups like the Alliance who are trying to build a market globally. You identify some of the key actors, some of the best practices working in these areas where we are, and identify the people who are going to go the furthest, we hope, and try to give them the seeds and the support that they need to get to the next level.
There's another interesting challenge involved in getting these clean cook stoves literally on the ground in developing countries, and that is the issue of regionality. In other words, a product that is designed or is most effective in, say, Latin America would be different than what you use in some parts of Africa or even in parts of Asia, right?
That is a challenge, and I think that's also why if you go to the Clean Cooking catalog, the link will be on the screens for all of you participants. There are hundreds of different stove models. They use different fuels because the available fuel may be different regionally, and they're also designed to accommodate different cooking practices, cooking tortillas on a griddle, or cooking in West Africa. There are the staple starch food requires a lot of mixing, and so you need a sturdier stove that won't tip over. In China, they cook on high heat. There's no such thing as low heat in China. Everything is in a wok, stir fry. So absolutely, we need to adjust to those, but we also have a few groups that are looking at having a core combustion section of the technology that you can then kind of wrap around the user interface of the stove that has a combustion core that can be used in many different regions, and then you modify the outside to adjust for the particular local context.
And from a technology perspective, it's almost amazing that doesn't exist yet. We're talking about cooking like people have done like our ancestors did, and 3 billion people are still doing that. But meanwhile, NASA has sent a spaceship to Pluto, and people are driving cars, they go 200 miles per hour. But we still can't cook with a clean fuel that works universally across other regions around the world. So it's amazing from a technology perspective. We haven't quite gotten to that point yet where we have that universal combustion, whatever it is. And I think for technologists and innovators, it's a great idea to look at is how do we do that?
Well, you have the attention of some portion of the tech or tech-savvy world right now. What is your focus for them? I mean, what if you were to issue an RFP to innovators, what are you looking for? I mean, what do you want our audience to work on, the ideas to nurture that would most help you right now?
Well, from my perspective, I think a lot of it is to leave it open to all of you guys, that we may not necessarily know the best ideas, and we're very familiar with the existing technologies, and in some ways we may be anchored. So we're looking for new ideas, new people to come see, listen to the challenges, see what's out there, and then bring your own ideas to the table. Relating to the point that Kip made on being able to use, adapt the same core technology to multiple uses, I think that's a key idea for us, in that we want to have stoves that are robust to multiple fuels, multiple usage scenarios. We have a lot of good options that are high performing, but within a range of fuel and usage situations. So we want to have technology that's a little bit more flexible as well, to accommodate the real life situations of how people cook. And so I would definitely encourage people to learn more, and I'll turn it to Kip to explain how to do that. And then bring ideas to the table. We're also, we've got a lot of players, partners of the Global Alliance, who are looking for partners as well, that they're working on distribution or manufacturing, and they're looking for additional design insights, or even how to improve manufacturing processes. So those are all areas where I think we could really benefit from people who are interested in getting involved.
I think that's exactly right. Learning more is always important. It takes a ton amount of funding to get to this level and to take this issue and move it to the next level, which is where it needs to be. Our goal is to reach 100 million cook stoves by 2020, and we're halfway to that goal right now, and we're right on tap to reach that goal. But there's a lot more people who don't have access to clean cook stoves and fuels, and to get there is going to take a lot more funding. So if any funders out there, talk to us, learn more. There's lots of opportunities to take these companies like we've been identifying and take them to the next level, and also other areas in the sector. Innovation, technology, we talk quite a bit about that. And just getting to know the Alliance, if you like, check out our website at cleancookstoves.org. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, the usual social media stuff, and just get engaged with us and find out more about the sector and how you can get involved. It's a really innovative sector that the more you learn about, the more exciting you can get.
And for all you foodies who are with us, follow Chef Jose Andres on Twitter. He is a global ambassador for the UN Foundation and Clean Cookstoves. And I've actually had the good fortune of being at his house and watching him put a clean cook stove into action for his own culinary masterpieces. It's pretty remarkable. He's a strong advocate and comes up with some very cool campaign ideas. Ranyee, one last point. I want to touch on some interesting wording I think that you use that is quite poignant. You talked about real life situations, what it's like to be on the ground in these developing countries. An ancillary aspect to these regions and the families we're talking about is the need to, or the effort to, or lack thereof, for electrification, for getting a grid system spread that far into the rural areas where they can have electricity and access to it. And you showed the BioLite product earlier that incorporates that. That seems to be a great opportunity for synergy with some of this technology and the innovation we see in that a cook stove can be more than just a cook stove, and electricity is maybe another one of our most elemental needs, at least in modern society, right beyond food and shelter.
Yeah, we are definitely working really closely with a lot of folks working on energy access, both expanding the grid and also looking at off-grid electricity solutions. And partly because electric cook stoves are zero emissions in the household. So that's a really good partnership that we're looking into how we can expand electrification enough to power a more energy-intensive cooking process. And then more broadly, in terms of access to clean cooking options, stoves and fuels, it's part of the broader energy access goal that is a big priority for a lot of us working in international development. And so those kinds of synergies are certainly things that we're looking to partner on.
Kip, turn the microphone to you. Final thoughts for our audience before we close out the hangout. What can be done? What needs to be done? Where you, as an alliance, holistically could use the most help?
I think there's, over the last 5 years since the Alliance was founded, there's been a ton of momentum growing. A lot of things have changed. We have a lot of people jumping into the sector who would never even have considered getting engaged 5 years ago. For example, some of the major funders are involved. Bank of America has been a partner. Deutsche Bank, a few others are helping raise money. And a lot of governments have committed around the world, committed a significant amount of funds to spurring the development to where it needs to be. But I think a lot more needs to be done. And it's something I think we've touched on quite a bit, from a technology perspective to a behavior change and helping convince people that they need these stoves, improving the health benefits of all the stoves, and communicating that to the people using them. There's a lot of work to be done with 3 billion people still relying on solid fuels to cook their food every day. It's a big problem, and I think we're going in the right direction, but we need additional help to get there.
Well, tech innovators are certainly stepping up to the challenge of getting clean cook stoves on the ground where they're most needed and making them more versatile and also more efficient. From the Global Alliance for Clean Cookstoves, Dr. Ranyee Chiang and Kip Patrick, thank you both again for taking your time and sharing your expertise with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, many more collaborations to come, and thank all of you for joining us. Follow us at CEA on Twitter, Facebook. You pick a social media outlet, we're there. And of course, you can see our website at ce.org. And stay with us for more information about how tech is helping our world, both on the ground in developing countries and also right in your own home. I'm Tyler Suiters with CEA. Until next time, thanks for being with us.